Good afternoon. This is Jackie Morris in the Office of Design. Today we have Gavin McDaniel to introduce and present the structures related design standards for updates. If you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll be addressing those at the end of this webinar. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Gavin. Gavin?
Thank you, Jackie, for the introduction. Welcome to the training session on the 2014 Structures-Related Design Standards Updates. I'm Gavin McDaniel. I'm the manager of the Structures Design Office Design Standards. The intent of this presentation is to highlight major changes with the design standards, just to make you aware of them. It's not to get too in deep into any of the particular design standards. So one of the things I want to do, and let's go to the next slide. Let's see, Jackie, how do you get it? It's not going. There we go. Which button?
Yeah.
This one? Okay. Sorry about that. All right. One of the things, a few things I want to touch on before we get into actual changes is I want to get our bearings by taking a quick look at the guide to the FDOT Publications. I also wanted to look briefly at some website navigation features that are specific to structures-related design standards and their supporting documents. I also want to again emphasize the instructions for design standards. The instructions, as many of you are aware of, they're fairly new. They've been around for a few years now, but they're increasingly important to the use of the design standards. We also would typically go over some developmental design standards, but there are no new DDSs at this time. Take a quick look at the mobile web page, and then we'll get into some general revisions to the structures-related design standards and some significant changes we've made to the structures-related design standards. All right, in this session we'll be focusing on the instructions for design standards and the design standards. The IDS is part of the family of publications that speak to the designer. And one thing that sets the IDS apart from the structures manual and the plans preparation manual, etc., is that the IDS provides guidance applicable only to the use of the design standards. For example, the SDG would provide general guidance for design of beams, but for instance, the fibs, there may be specific issues related to the fibs, such as maximum bonded pre-stressing force, etc. All that information is located in the IDS. The design standards belong to the family of publications speaking to the contractor. The designer must be familiar with these, but information to the designer and direction to the designers should not be included in the design standards. So the IDS is a great tool because it allows information that used to be in the design standards that are actually to the engineer to be in the correct location. And we got to also keep in mind that the contractor does not see the IDS. It's not a contract document. It's not a construction contract document. So that brings us to these definitions real quick. The IDS provides general instructions to assist the EOR in properly incorporating the design standards in the plans. And let me ask y'all this question. When available, and this is true or false, when available, the IDS is a design contract document and must be followed to ensure proper use of the associated design standard. Some may be surprised, but the answer is true. The IDS is in the boilerplate language for all the design contracts for the standard scope of services, so they are extremely important to ensure proper use of each associated design standard. All right, taking a look at website navigation. In July 2013, the e-booklet shifted, the 2013 booklet shifted downward, and notice that the developmental design standards remains in place because it's not tied to a certain implementation date. So we look at the new page here, we'll see the 2013 is down below under the historical. The 2014 book is now released. It will be effective January 2014. John Mothler has some training and discussions he's done on the virtual implementation process, which is the stuff above the current design standards. So if you take a look at the ebook and click on there, I want to kind of go over some supporting documents for the structures related design standards. We have a column for the instructions, the IDS. We have a column for data table cell libraries and borderless DGNs. If you look here, the terms of use under the borderless DGNs, these are provided for certain instances where modification to the design standards are necessary, and these terms of use should be followed. And we provide 3 methods, and this is to provide consistency throughout the state on how these are inserted into the plans. So please take a look at those if you use the borderless DGNs. But in the data tables and the borderless DGNs, those are zip files. It'll bring you to a file that opens. There may be one file in there. There may be multiple files in there, depending on what design standard you're looking at. The design instructions, you can also click on the combined available IDSs, and that will take you to a book where you can navigate through by the panel, the bookmark panel on the side, and you can click on whichever design standard index you're wanting to see the IDS for at that time. You can also save this to your computer. I like going to the individual files when I need them. In the columns that we saw previously, the headers are up top above these last three rows or columns. You have individual IDSs, and note that they can be applied to a series of indexes. And then you have the individual microstation files, the DGN files without the border. Okay. All right, please note that the ECSO office has released the maintenance release 4 and is now available on their website. It's recently updated in May. Please note that it does not necessarily coincide with our design standards release, so it's required that you manually replace the cells.xml file with a file from the Structures Design Office website. The updated data tables will not show up in the bar menu interface correctly. So to go to the Structures Design website and click on More. Oops. And then go to, after you click on More, you'll be brought to this page, Structure Design Standards, Details, and Data Tables. And then it'll look something like this. The screen was too small, so I had to kind of break it up. The cells.xml file is located in item number 6. It has instructions on how to include it in your microstation mode. There's some archived, the menu data table cell libraries are also here. These are the same files that are actually on the Design Standards e-booklet page. But item number 3 is interesting because these are PDFs of data tables that are not associated with design standards. So the volume 3, or I'm sorry, the IDSs all have pictures of data tables or figures of data tables in there that show you what the data tables look like, and they'll also be downloadable on the Design Standards e-booklet page. However, if the data table is not associated with a standard, it's not there. To see the PDF, you can go here to look at the PDF, but they are included in the microstation cell libraries too, so you can pull it back from cell libraries. All right, let's see. You want to take a quick look at the mobile web page. We used to have links at the top of the page with a little cell phone looking device. Since our web page has been modified, it's kind of difficult to find now. So you can go to the Office of Design web page, and the mobile link is on the left-hand navigation panel. And it'll take you to the web page, and it's actually also been redesigned too. This is a collection of links from the FDOT publications that are most commonly used in the field. We're going to keep several years or a few years of design standards and instructions in there because they're still being built out in the field, so we want people out in the field to still have access or easy access to those files. We also want to hear your feedback, so please take time to take this quick survey if you use them. All right, getting into some design standards revisions. Again, these are some general revisions. Survey elevation markers that were placed on bridge railings were no longer being used and not required on new construction. They need not be replaced for railing retrofits either. So the technology has changed. They're not being used by the survey department. Therefore, we're not requiring them anymore. So there's a series of indexes in the 400 series that note has been removed. Also, the specifications for welded wire reinforcement. The ASTM specifications are centrally located now in section 931 of the standard specifications. So those notes throughout the design standards have been modified to reference 931. Also, Structure Design Bulletin 1303 gives guidance on how to include the surface finish requirements for walls and railings, etc. So please check out that Structures Design Bulletin. We have removed the finish requirements that were stated in the multiple design standards, and we left it open for the process that the Structures Manual now dictates. Okay, we've also reorganized Index 501 and updated the approved geosynthetic product tables. So if you do that, take a look at that. The term pull boxes for utilities has been renamed now to embedded junction boxes. This clarifies the usage and aligns it with the changes to the specification 630. So if you deal with those a lot, you might want to read specification 630. There have been some major changes to that, as well as any design standards that referenced pull boxes now reference EJBs or embedded junction boxes. Another major change is now that quantity boxes have been removed from our data tables. Now the summary of all quantities will be shown in a single location within the plans. So there's been a design bulletins released. It's Structure Design Bulletin number 13-12 will provide more information for that. All right, we have a couple new indexes. Some of the new ones are Index 404, 405, and 477. These were developed to complement and support the policy of practical design. Indexes 404 is for narrow and recessed curbs. 405 is for wide curbs. These are solutions for bridge traffic railing approach and trailing in transitions for treatments for triple R projects where the railings on bridges will not be modified or improved. Index 477 has been migrated from the developmental design standards, and it uses a Thri-beam panel overlay which is attached to the railing to improve its crashworthiness and slightly increase the strength of the railing. This index also includes its own details for approach and trailing in transitions. So you'll want to, again, IDS is very important, look at the instructions for design standards for each of these indexes to determine the applicability for your project. These indexes, again, may only be used with railings having structurally continuous top rails. So I have a picture here of a railing meeting that criteria. This top railing is structurally continuous over 2 or more spans. And if we look here, for railings having discontinuous top rails, the bridge railing most likely need to be improved for triple R projects. And therefore, you would need to use indexes 470 through 476 or index 480 series. And you can see examples of discontinuous top rails here. These are the old precast style where they cast this post around the precast beams. Okay. Index 5200, we can now no longer use the term sound barriers. We changed it all down from sound barriers to noise walls. This is to bring it in compliance with FHWA terminology. Also, we've added side installed panels for ease of construction where overhead restraints, telephone lines, etc. If there's not enough room to lift the panel overhead and install it, the side install panels are allowed in locations where that's an issue. All right, AASHTO Type 2 beams. They're back. Back in 2009, with the release of the FIBs, the instructions were to no longer use AASHTO Type 2 or AASHTO beams, period, and AASHTO Type 2 beams went along for that ride. However, over the years, we've realized we have an efficiency gap where the FIB is not optimized on shorter spans, and we have a gap between our flat slab bridges and the FIB. You could use the FIBs, but they're just not as efficient. So we've also released Structures Design Bulletin 13-11, and that has complete details on the implementation. Just to kind of get into it a little bit, here's a graph of the beam charts that we have in the IDS. This one does, the one in the IDS doesn't show the flat slab plots, which this one does actually. But you can see the gap between the flat slab spans and the FIB spans, and you know, we could use the FIB 36, but then again it's not as efficient as it could be. So the AASHTO Type 2 beam fit in here really nicely. So as you can see here, here's a curve with the capacity for the AASHTO Type 2 beams. It fits in there really nicely. And there were also some other changes with the Type 2 beam associated with that, but you can read the design bulletin, and it goes into great detail there. So please check out that bulletin for more information. Design Standards Index 2511 and 2512. Industry had requested beveled bearing plates, which could be used on either end of the beam. This would, so therefore we've modified plate B, which is the tapered plate here. We've modified that, centered the holes up, and aligned them to where they could be used on either end. This index happened to be also updated to include the AASHTO Type 2 beams. All right, Index 2601. We slightly increased the allowable length for pile buildup. There were issues where the contractor was in a zone where he didn't know whether to do the cast in place or what he was to do with his pile if it was too short. So we've modified a detail. We've added a detail to Index 2601, which is the unforeseen reinforced CIP pile buildup detail. This allows for overlap of 1 foot where the contractor has options for either cast in place buildup or non-drivable splice. In looking at this and coming up with this simple detail, because it is very simple and it covers a wide range of conditions, we considered pin, fixed, tension, compression pile conditions. The only anomaly was where we had tension piles and there wasn't enough development length there, and this is an example of one of the diagrams we had sketched out. So we added note 5 on the design standards to handle this condition. Okay, in Index 21600 series, we've added the Thri-beam panel, which is attached to the trusses on the acro bridges. Again, this is just our standard is only for the Acro 300 series, which does not come with its own railings. So this is fully detailed in the new Index 21640, and it also has new approach and trailing end transitions using either Thri-beam guardrail or Type K barriers. So please check out that new detail. What the main reason is that for this improvement is the Thri-beam panels, we needed to improve the crashworthiness of them and increase protection against impact on these main structural elements. That's all the major changes we have, and we're going to discuss today. Again, please look at the front of the design standards booklet where the revisions log there if you want to see every change that was made. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.